Maybe you don't know.
This time to build. This time to build. Power. This time to build. Power. This time to build. Power. This time to build. Power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 94 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I have just returned from the CWA Summit in Loveland, Colorado, and had a pretty unbelievably productive time out there, far beyond what I expected. I guess I was thinking of it as a small OR, but for me, it was miles beyond that. Somewhere around 12 hours of interviews came home with me, with Dr. Jared Vaggie, Touchstone route setter Jeremy Ho, Tonde Castillo, a really great conversation about engaging minority youth in climbing and so much more. I'm not sure when you're going to start getting those, when they're going to make their way out, but I'd imagine within the next month or two, they'll probably see the airwaves. So big thanks to Emily and team at the CWA for having me out. I'm already looking forward to next year. So stoked for it. A couple small pieces of business to tend to before we jump into this thing. First, we are now set up to ship to lots of countries. Everything on our site, finger care kits, process journals, teas and tanks, which we're low on, but I've already ordered more, so they're coming. Definitely to the UK, Australia, most of Europe, I believe, Canada. So if you've been considering buying something to help support Power Company Climbing, definitely hit us up, PowerCompanyClimbing.com. And thanks to Lana for getting that set up. She's a champion over here. Second, if you're coming out for the International Climbers Festival in July here in Lander and you're interested in movement assessments or private sessions, be it indoors or outdoors, several of us will be around. I know Nate and I will. I think Blake will as well. And the machine shop should be up and running. So we're planning on having some sessions in there. Just get a hold of me through the contact form on the website, through my email if you have it, and we'll get you up on the schedule. I'm excited for that as well. I'm excited for people just to see the machine shop. I'm building the 20 degree wall right now as we speak. Well, not actually as we speak, but you know what I mean. Okay, this one's a long time coming. I recorded it in Hueco a little over a year ago, I think March 2017. And the main reason I put it off was because I knew the editing was going to be a nightmare. And it was. I think anybody who knows John Sherman won't be surprised that there were some disagreements in here, because he's an opinionated, outspoken, grizzly old dude, especially when drinking, which we were. And honestly, that's what makes him so lovable, prickly but lovable. Just don't tell him I said that. And we definitely get into some history here. We talk about what he's up to now. But maybe most interesting, we get into a bit of a grade debate, at which point I bring Matt Wilder and Alex Puccio into the conversation. And they're elsewhere in the room, so the audio isn't great during some of their parts, but I did my best to make it listenable. So stay tuned after. I'll update you a bit on what John's doing, the Old Man Lightning project, as well as a little about Verm's opinions, especially since he's not here to defend himself.
Maybe you don't know.
This time.
Oh, that's such an idealistic view of rating systems.
It's true, though.
You're
I'm an optimist, John.
You're just a babe. For God's sakes, Chris.
This time. Power. This time to build. Power. This time to build. Power. This time to build. Power.
How long has it been since you did it?
25 years. Maybe 26 now.
I'm getting older.
You're old.
Yeah, this project's taking a while because I hurt my finger.
Hurt your finger recently?
In October, matching the bolt on the way up to the lip.
Yep.
I got to the lip a couple times, and then I was trying to head back up there. Felt like I was greasing off a little bit.
Yep.
Going like, okay, drop down, chalk up, try it again. Pulled on the first holds. Uh-oh.
Oh, man.
Screwed something up in the knuckle of my bird finger.
Oh, man. Can't be fucking that finger up. That's pretty badass, though, that you're going back for that thing. Who are you working with?
Don Kish is the cinematographer and director of the film.
Yep.
Old Man Lightning. And we have a lot of other great help. Andy Best was helping photograph. He's a tremendous photographer, or helping video. Josh Helling, one of the top guides and video people out in Yosemite, was there. Steve Baumgartner. So we had
somebody's training
a top-notch crew.
Who's training you to get you out of old man drinking shape and back into rock climbing shape?
Well, I don't know if he's getting me out of old man drinking shape, but he's getting me into rock climbing shape. That would be Ryan Whited.
Nice.
From Arkansas. And Arkansas Ryan, as he's known, or Meatball. Yeah, you could interview Ricky O about him. Probably get some good stories. But he is a musculoskeletal guru. He is my guru of choice. He's the one who took me from a complete wreck, 200 pounds, could barely do 2 pull-ups.
Oh, wow.
And got me to where I'm getting to the lip of Midnight Lightning now. And I've been there several times before I hurt my finger. Didn't quite crack that mantle move over. It's a very tough move. Anybody who's been there can attest to that.
Yep.
So...
but you're going back. You're going to do it.
Oh, hell yeah, I'm going back. It's just been raining and snowing the whole time. And it's like it was in October. I was up there. I was getting to the lip. Ryan got me in such good shape. I was getting to the lip when nobody gave me a chance. I mean, they're going like, this old fat fuck.
I didn't give you a chance, to be honest. I was like, no fucking way he's getting back there.
No. Well,
but I'm stoked that you did.
Ye of little faith. But I got there to the mantle a couple times. I think about 4 times. And it certainly took me more than 4 tries at the mantle before I got it 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And then heading back up there again, I hurt my finger. And then it took about a month to heal up that finger. And by that time, it just was snowing and snowing and snowing and snowing. And it is officially now the wettest winter on record in Yosemite.
Oh, shit.
Since they started keeping records. And there just has never been a window to go back and try it. So that's why I'm down here in Hueco trying to stay fit.
You're looking fit. You look trim. You're looking good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could say the same for you. But
I know. I'm just, we're trading places. So we're sitting here in the Hueco Rock Ranch at the house here, and we got a room full of people.
Thank you, Alpine Club.
Thanks, Alpine Club. We appreciate it. And room full of people here that we're hanging out with. So if you guys hear people in the background or people heckling, that's what's going on. And all of you guys, if you have questions, comments, want to heckle John or me, that's fine too. So just jump in.
Whoa, is that you, Z-Clip?
You might as well go ahead and explain that, because like 3 people asked me today after you called me Z-Clip. So,
well, okay, Chris Hampton likes to go under the nom de plume or whatever it's called.
Used to
of O-Dub.
Still do. I answer to
O-Dub for his off-width.
Yep.
Prowess. However, I've never seen this guy on a trad climb in my life.
It's never actually happened.
I have seen him. I have seen him on sport climbs plenty. So it seemed like Z-Clip was a better moniker than O-Dub.
Yeah,
so
I'm down.
Anyway,
my next album's going to be Z-Clip.
There we
under
go.
that name. So, do you get here much anymore? How often do you get back to Hueco?
Every couple of years, I come down for a week or 2. It seems like, but I definitely took a big break.
Yeah.
After about 95 or 6.
Is that when the regulations first went into effect?
The regulations came into effect then. They were actually in effect before then in certain places, but they got stricter and stricter. But actually, to be honest, what really drove me nuts was that the climbers were being idiots.
Okay.
And there was a lot of chipping going on.
Yep.
And I found myself walking around the boulders waiting to find somebody gouging out one of these holds on an established problem. It was happening a lot on established problems to make them easier.
Right.
And thinking, man, I can't wait to catch one in the act and then just take a rock and beat their head in. Mm-hmm. And it just pissed me off so much. And then I realized I was just walking around the whole season angry.
And just wasn't happy
Well,
at all.
I spent a season, I climbed every chipped problem in Hueco without the chipped holds. And I would go back to Pete's, which is where people hung out then,
Yep.
say, hey, I did such and such problem without the chipped holds today. You know, you guys don't need to chip these holds. You know, you will be able to do these.
Right.
You know, if when you apply yourself and everything like that, don't bring it down to your level now because your level's going to go up. And you're just stealing from the future doing this. And everybody's like, whatever. Verm, they couldn't care less.
Yeah.
And I
It's
realized
all about their own egos.
Well, hey, you know, my time had come and gone here at that point is what I felt. And it was time to move on because I wasn't having fun here. I was angry all the time. And it was just like bouldering ought to be fun. You know, you ought to psych you up every time you go out. And I thought you was going out angry.
I thought you just got happy by being angry. That's what it always seemed like to me.
No. I mean, I get happy being angry at you, Chris, but but who doesn't?
It's true. It's true. I invite it. I bring it on myself. Yeah, that sounded like a lot of wisdom, and you've always played this super crotchety, cranky old guy. So, you know, where's all this wisdom been hiding all that time?
Maybe I should have brought it out sooner. You know,
I'm surprised that you're here as often as you are because, you know, a lot of the old schoolers that were here in the early days have pretty much abandoned it because of the regulations and, you know, all that went into effect. What makes it, you know, why do you feel okay coming back?
Well, I would say actually the regulations take it back closer to the experience I had when I was first here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there were days where I was the only person in the park, the only visitor who wasn't a ranger.
Right.
Many of those back in the early days.
Yeah.
You know, where I was living in the campground and there was nobody else in the campground. I was the only camper. And there was nobody else who came into the park all day except for me. And I was just running around, scoping out boulders and doing new lines. And, you know, that was wonderful. It was amazing. I mean, it was, I mean, I was a kid in a candy store. I was a drunk in a liquor store. You know, I mean, it was just like, holy smokes. It was just like everything there was waiting for me to do.
Yeah.
And now, you know, well, then, you know, let's go back a bit, you know, rewind 20 years or so back to the mid 90s. And it was getting so crowded with tons of climbers. And it was more than the resource could legitimately handle.
Sure.
I don't blame them for cutting down the numbers. I don't like the way they did it. I think that was ridiculous. It's overcomplicated.
Yep.
But as far as, you know, maintaining the resource, I think, yeah, they had to do something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's just a simple limitation on how many people came in a park each day would be okay with, as opposed to having this, you know, you can go to North Mountain, but you can't go anywhere else thing.
Right. It's a pretty complicated system.
That seems overly tricky to me.
Yeah.
But now I you know, I go out there, and today it was great. It was just the first day that the 5 bimbos were reopened to climbing after decades of closure.
And are those your problems?
Well, some of them, yeah. Whatever. I mean, I don't know. I did a lot of first ascents here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd have to look at a book and see if which ones I put up or not. I can't legitimately.
Sure.
I can't remember. There were so many of them.
Yeah.
But it was great going out with a bunch of people who had been climbing here for over a decade and had never gotten to climb on those rocks before.
Right. And today was
and
their
they
first
were just
chance.
going nuts and going like, man, I just did 9-10 problems I'd never done before.
Yeah.
And they were just absolutely thrilled. And it was so cool to see that. And it's a step in the right direction. Texas Parks finally, taking away one of the climbing bans as opposed to opening another one.
Yeah.
And giving something back to the climbers. And I think this is the first time this has ever happened today. And it's such a step in the right direction. It means that they are being true to their mission of protecting the resource and allowing recreational opportunity at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we aren't, at the Five Bimbos, we aren't, damaging any of the archaeological resources there. And so they said, okay, you can go back and climb there again. And there's a lot of the closures that I hope get lifted because of that.
Yeah, there's been talk of all sorts of things.
Yeah,
like they've
north face of the mushroom. They sandblasted off all the rock art on that. That was the part that sandblasted it off. It's just like the climbers didn't cause the problem there.
Right.
The climbers didn't cause the problem at any of the closures, but there's a lot of politics involved, and there's a kind of Hatfield-McCoy thing that goes way back between climbers and rangers, and so
sure. And some of it makes sense. Some of it should be protected.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I support some of the closures, and there's some that I don't.
Yep.
And I'm glad that the Five Bimbos got open today, because that's one of the ones I didn't support, because that's one of the ones that we can mitigate any of the impacts that we have as climbers through erosion control and such, and protect the resource there and enjoy the climbing.
How close do you follow what's going on here, closure-wise, and all that?
I wouldn't say. I wish I could say it was closer, but honestly it isn't, because when I would say local climbers just rolled over with help from the Access Fund, and I'm not a big fan of theirs. I'm going to say it right here.
Okay.
Then say okay, we're going to go ahead and let them close the north face of the mushroom boulder. And then we're going to hope that this shows that we're playing ball with the Park Service, and that maybe something will change in the future. But that was a big mistake, in my opinion, because I was here when I first came here. I was doing what's left of last. There's photos of me on it, the big Hueco on the left side of the north face of the mushroom.
Yep.
You jump up, you grab that, you underclean it, you do this super cool problem out of it. Well, there was graffiti next to that Hueco that said L. Sherman. Somebody had written it in Sharpie on the rock.
Gotcha.
And there's tons of graffiti all over the north face of the mushroom back then.
Right.
And so we jokingly referred to those as the L. Sherman, but that was there before I even showed up in Hueco. But wow, hey, it's got my name written all over this place. But that's how the genesis of the L. Murray names came, because we didn't know what Murray had called those problems to the right of that. And then so we started calling them the L. Murrays, because L. Sherman was written on the rock left of it. And we said, well, Murray did those. We knew it was Murray, but we just didn't know what he called him. So we started calling left, center, and right L. Murray.
Yeah.
But the thing is then a year later, the park came in and sandblasted off
all that graffiti.
And there's pictures in the El Paso Times of them. The Tiwa chieftain from the local Indian tribe is holding the sandblaster, standing next to a couple of rangers after they sandblasted off the graffiti and the rock art off of the north face of the mushroom. So all of a sudden, in one fell swoop, the Park Service and the Tiwas have done more to destroy the archaeological resources of the park than climbers have in 50 years of climbing here.
Right.
And so it's always seemed unfair to me that the climbers have been the ones to bear the brunt of the closures and stuff like that,
and that
to
there
make
was
people
no fight
feel
back.
good that something's being done about graffiti and whatnot, when we're not the ones leaving the graffiti. So I really hope that the next opening is going to be the north face of the mushroom. There's talk about it.
Yep.
And I really encourage
heard the
Texas
rumbling.
Parks do that because of how the resource was already demolished there, and not by climbers.
Yeah.
And so why not let climbers go back there? I can't see any legitimate reason why climbers wouldn't be allowed back there. And certainly we are more than willing as climbers, and the Alpine Club, I'm sure, would help out tremendously with this, to put in the erosion control there.
Yep.
Harden the surface like they do. They've been building trail systems all throughout Hueco. These things didn't exist when I was coming here.
Yep.
And now there's these marvelous trails that run all over the park where they have hardened the surface to minimize the impacts, concentrate traffic in one area, and that's why you build a trail in a place, so that people don't run all over the place. You go to one logical area, let them go through there, protect the resource by hardening the trail, putting in erosion control and such.
Keep the erosion to a minimum.
Yeah. And we can do that with landings on boulder problems. That's our bouldering trails.
Yeah. And I was just over there a few weeks ago, and there's a bunch of rolls of that geomesh fabric, underneath the mushroom. So it looks like there's some work being done, and that they're addressing it. And like you said, I think that's really.
In a weekend
great.
we could fix it all up. I mean, we could bring in
and climbers
fill that is that won't be mistaken for fill from this area. I mean, how archaeologists would protect a site. They would cover it with a fill that is from a different area, so that they can separate that out and know that that's not part of what they're studying.
Right.
And because I've talked to the archaeologists about this, and so we can protect these landing zones like that. We can build them up, protect whatever archaeology may or may not be beneath them, and provide the recreational opportunity, the other side of the coin as far as state parks is concerned, and take care of both things. And hopefully this is a step in the right direction that we had today. It was awesome doing 3-star red again today. And people haven't done it for
20 years or
20
something,
years,
25 years.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That's cool. And it's cool that you were here on the day that it reopened.
Oh, I was thrilled to be up there and jumping back on it again.
I think that's exciting.
That might be the best V2 in the park, Yeah.
What year did you first start coming here? And how did that come about?
Be the winter of 82, 83. And I was hanging out in Joshua Tree, and some of the El Paso locals were out there.
Is that like Mike Head and that crew?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the common knowledge in the climbing world back then was that there was no such thing as climbing in Texas. It sounds ridiculous now, but I mean, there was a ton of different states in the nation where we knew that there was no climbing.
Right.
Texas,
Kansas and Nebraska.
Illinois. Places now that just seem ridiculous because how much amazing climbing has been found in them. But it was just there's no such thing as climbing there. We just know that,
Sure. Yeah.
And back then, that was the thought. But they showed us these photos. And it was wow, holy crap. Better go out and check it out. I'm not doing anything else with my life. I'm just, holy smokes, how old was I in 82?
Well, you're 107 now, so.
I think it was about 23 then. Yeah, something like that. So, it was just wow, okay, I'll check this out. And they said there was good bouldering out there, and then they knew I was a fan of bouldering. But not a whole lot had been developed. I came out here and just going, oh my God.
Yeah, rock everywhere.
This place is insane. And I remember, I think I would say in my memory, the first problem that really, struck me that I put up as first cent here, that struck me as to how deep the potential was here was Sign of the Cross. Okay. Because that's in this weird little amphitheater,
little
between
hole,
three boulders. You got to crawl in to get there and stuff like that. And I just kind of wandering around, crawled in there and was going, oh my God, look at this incredible line coming out of here. And then that got me thinking, man, I have got to crawl under every boulder in this park and see what's there.
Yep.
And then I made it a point every time I would walk a different path back to the campground. every day. And then just check out what was on that path. And so, I got to know the park really well.
Yeah.
Just going, and come up with this humongous list of projects to do. And then start whittling away at them.
Did you keep track of it somehow, or was it all just in your head?
Mostly it was in my head, but I think I probably wrote down the projects that I wanted to do the most.
Right.
I was like, okay, I'm showing up next season. I'm going to do this, and this that I'd seen. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I didn't start writing it down until I was asked to do a guidebook, and that one, and it was kind of functional because people always came up. They knew that I knew where the boulder problems were because I was the person who was out there doing all the bouldering, and
there were people here climbing routes at the time.
Yeah, and so I would go. People end up like Super Salad in town all the time, going to a salad bar and all you could eat because they're like, hey, climbers, all you can eat. And, hey, it was cheap. You could just like chow down all night. And I kept drawing topos on napkins of how to find this boulder problem or that boulder problem. And after a while, I was going like, why don't I just draw these down once and put them in a book? And because I was gotten tired of drawing them down every night I was there. Yeah. So, that was kind of genesis of the guidebook project.
How many problems do you think you had FA'd? Do you have any idea how many you had FA'd before the first guidebook that you wrote here?
I'm saying somewhere between 400 and 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't keep track of them all because you didn't know if Mike had just rolled by some V1 and run up it or something like that, you know. I had a pretty definitive list of who had done everything from V3 and up back at that time. I tracked that, but down below that. But at the same time, Mike, he was more interested in developing the rope climbing, and it put up unbelievable. Most of the sport routes on the front side were done as incredibly scary trad routes with minimal protection when he put them up. Yep. And then he went back and retro bolted them and turned them into popular sport climbs.
Cool. When did the V grade system come about? Was that before the first guidebook?
Okay, that would be 89 maybe, something like that, late 80s.
When did you write the first guidebook?
First guidebook. Okay, first guidebook. I think I would have to look at the actual copyright on it. I think it was 90 or 91.
Okay, so you had the V grade already.
But that copyright's like a year after it's finished writing or something. Yep. And that was introduced in that first guidebook. But the story behind that was I wrote the first guidebook with no grades in it because I felt that cheapened boulder problems. Okay. Reduced them down to a number. They should be known by a name, say, like, hey, my project now, Midnight Lightning. Yeah. The number is insignificant compared to the name of that. People want to do Midnight Lightning. It doesn't matter what the number is because
I agree. Gives it more personality.
Exactly. Yeah. And I felt that's how all boulder problems should be. Well, my publisher didn't feel that way. It almost got the print with no ratings in it. But then...
Imagine how history could have been different, John.
Yeah, and but then he said, I can't sell this. You either have to rate it or we're going to can the whole project. And I'd already spent an entire season going out mapping the park and everything.
Was the only system out there at the time the B grades?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, so Gill's B grades.
B up to B3. Yeah.
And those... were confusing to most people because it was not an open-ended system. It was a closed-ended system that was designed to shift over time. Yep. And nobody liked shifting their B2 down to B1 or their B1 down to nothing. Right. So that didn't satisfy the egos of most climbers.
Did you ever consider the Fontainebleau scale for bouldering?
I do. I wasn't even familiar with it. Yeah. And... Now that I am familiar with it, I wouldn't, because it's confusing as hell, because it has traverse ratings, boulder ratings, climb ratings. They're all the same sort of numbers, and they're really they aren't interchangeable, but they have the same number and letter.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes it confuses the hell out of people.
They look exactly the same as root grades, but they mean different things.
But I mean, grading systems are just complete fucking bullshit. They're ego yardsticks. They become that very quickly. And so I didn't want to put them in the original guide. Like I said, I thought it cheapened the whole experience, and it ended up there because I put all that work in, and when I realized the book wasn't going to come out if I didn't rate them, I went back and climbed every problem in that in that guide except for one, and rated them. And
what was the one you didn't climb?
Too Deep to Leap. It's over, and damn it, it's closed to climbing now. Otherwise, I would go do the damn thing. No, actually, I wouldn't do the thing. I kept bruising my toe. It's a run and jump, kick off the wall. And I bruised my toe doing it, and I didn't want to keep bruising. Every time I tried it I thought my toe was healed. Every time I went back to try it, I bruised my toe again, and I was just like, screw that, So I'm good with not doing that one problem, man. Yeah. I did the other 900 or whatever that were in.
That's why it's graded totally wrong. That one problem threw the whole scale off.
Yeah, probably did. In fact, people complain to me all the time now that the scale is off. Then all the problems they complain about are the old ones.
Yeah.
That they are all sandbags. I'm just going like, hang on, look who you're complaining to. You're complaining to the person who put them up, who rated them, who invented the rating system.
Yeah.
And you're saying that my ratings are wrong?
Yeah.
Maybe you're just rating a little soft on your end now. It's just great inflation hits all rating systems, and bouldering rating systems, V grades aren't any different. So
yeah.
But this grading system makes climbers for number climbers, John Gill graded the vertical pass, It's just without grading.
So, no. He had his B1, B2, B3. Yeah. Gil did.
Yep.
He wanted to quantify it in some way too, but he wanted that system to slide to where B3 was always a kind of hypothetical
one ascent only. Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. One ascent, never repeated. But that got people who did a hard problem, they wanted it to be called B3. They would never try it again, because if they repeated it themselves, then they would have to downgrade their own problem from B3 to B2. So, so people would end up not repeating the problem they had done in the hopes that nobody else could repeat it, and then it would stay B3, and that was like just as equally messed up as all the ego.
Then a whole new ego battle comes into play.
Yeah, but all rating systems end up just becoming ego yardsticks, and V grades were no different.
Yeah. What was the hardest V grade that was in the book at the time? Do you know which problem it was?
The first guidebook, there was a number of V9s that were in there. And so.
I thought I heard a story, and for some reason I thought you had told me this, probably in St. George at Misty Murphy's house. But someone else may have told me it, that originally you had wanted the V scale to be closed-ended as well. Any validity to that?
No.
No, it was always going to be an open-ended system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I been around long enough by the time I was coming up with this that I had seen, when I started climbing, there was one thing rated 512 in California, and I started in California.
Yep.
And that's the only climbing I knew. So it's like, oh wow, one climb 512A. That's like, that's the ultimate. That's as hard as climbing gets. And then those were downrated later. I went and did it, and it was 11C later. I think that's what it's called now. And so and I'm a climbing history buff. So I've read any number of times in different books throughout history. Oh, nobody's going to be able to train harder than us,
right?
Devote
no one will ever
themselves
climb
harder.
12C.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, Max Jones and Mark Hudon, they were famous for saying, well, 513 is going to come, but if it comes, you're going to have to be built just so. If you don't have the right size fingers and the right size reach and the, this and that, there's no way you're going to be able to do it because nobody can possibly train harder than we do.
Right.
And so nobody's ever going to get better than us. The only way they'll climb anything harder than us is that they've got a better reach or smaller fingers or whatever.
Right. And those guys were arguably visionaries.
And now it's just laughable.
Right.
But I've heard that over and over and over again. And I don't mean to pick on those two guys because
in every sport.
I've heard it from climbers all the way, hey, you go back to Half Dome's impossible to climb.
Yep.
You could go back to the 1850s or whatever when they thought nobody would ever stand on top of Half Dome, Yep. And so, it's been a constant in the climbing community that the people who are doing the ultimate climbs, air quotes, always think that nobody's going to climb better than them.
Yep.
Because they're the best of their age. But it always turns out that the next generation's doing better, and we're not anywhere close, I don't think, to where we can get. You look at other sports where, like the 100-yard dash or something like that, 100 meters or whatever, the world record gets broken just by tiny
fractions of a second.
Whenever it does get broken. And these people are working out. They're in wind tunnels with clothing design.
All the science is behind them.
All this incredible science behind them that we don't have in climbing.
Right.
And it's trickling in, but there's not the money in climbing.
Yep. Got a long
and
way to go.
hopefully there never will be. But a lot of people feel free to argue with me on that.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a different animal if there is.
But it's going to be in the Olympics now. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, hey, somebody wins the Olympic climbing gold medal. All of a sudden, they're going to be able to make money off of it. Now, in my generation, we would laugh at that.
Right.
It's just like, because I remember, someday climbers will be ranked. There'll be competitions. All that just sounded so ludicrous and antithetical to what climbing was all about.
Right.
But it's become the norm now. And so when enough money gets into it, then all of a sudden, then maybe the science will come in and such, and we will start to approach, that top of that asymptotic curve. But we're not even close. We're still on the steep end. I look at what's going on out here in Hueco now, and I'm just astounded by the problems I see that have been put up in the last 10 years. Things that I didn't imagine doing a while back. Like when I stopped coming here and kind of got upset about all the chipping and stuff like that. It was right about when, and let's not equate chipping with Fred Nicole here, but it's right when he had shown up. It was like about a year before I stopped showing up, and he was not responsible for any of that to my knowledge. So.
Right.
But
he did.
Holy smokes, this guy was
standard.
strong as hell. It's going like, wow, this guy's way stronger than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And
he's way stronger than most everyone has ever been.
Exactly. and he was just crimping out these little holds, adding these like super crimpy sit down starts to these problems, just going like, wow. Those were footholds. Now he's using them as handholds, sort of thing.
Right.
He was shaking things up there. But now, it's gone beyond that to where this crazy compression stuff is going on. Now, I could see what he was doing. I could understand what he was doing, but now
pulling
I see
on
these
holds.
Wild compression problems that were things that, I would walk past and not recognize as a boulder problem.
Right. You say there's no holds
here. Back in the day, like 25 years ago.
Oh, that's interesting to hear.
Whereas any of his problems, I could see, here's a positive crimper. It's just smaller.
Right.
Then I can pull on or on a steeper wall or further from the next hold or whatever, but I could just see like, all you had to do is get stronger and you could pull on these things. But now, it's morphed into, more crazy compression than I ever envisioned way back in the day.
Sure.
Is there a
super
problem
cool.
that you're referring to or that you're thinking of when you Talk about.
I looked at that rhino thing the other day, and that's something I would have walked by back then and not have looked at and said, "Oh, hey, that's a problem waiting to be done," But at the same time, I was in this mindset, and maybe my mindset is shifting now that I'm starting to get back in shape, because I go back to Devil's Butthole, and we're going like, well, that first half, there's a lot of compression on that. It's just like this, not like this. It's
right.
It's just a different degree of how sloping and how strong you have to press to hang on to it, and I go around now. It's kind of freaky going around the park and, being 57 years old, whatever, and going like, holy crap, 25 years ago, I sent this problem, and now I can't even do the first move. And I was going like, wow, well, I guess we were stronger back then than I thought, but at the same time, that's the norm now. People are that strong. Average climbers are doing, well, I don't know if average climbers are doing baby face. Maybe they are. But I was just going like, wow, that was a hard problem back in the day. And now it doesn't seem hard compared to something like rhino or Aragorn or whatever, those things. So.
But I think it took what you guys were doing to lead up to the rhinos and the crown of Aragorns. And, if you guys hadn't set that foundation that you did of hard bouldering, and maybe even putting this grading system on it that people can use to challenge themselves, it's not always just an ego thing. That's part of it for sure, but it's also a way for us to understand what the challenge is, and that way we can find appropriate challenges while we're out there. And people have used that.
Oh, that's such an idealistic view of rating systems.
It's true, though. I'm an optimist, John.
You're just a babe.
I became a sport climber, and I became an optimist. It's like you just popped out of the womb now or something like that. For God's sakes, Chris. No, they are ego yardsticks. That's what they are. It's true, they are. But if it weren't for that, the allure of the V13 grade, people may not have pushed there.
Oh, good. As soon as the first guidebook came out, within weeks, people were claiming the first V10 because V9 was the biggest grade in that. It's just like, oh my God, I'm going to, it's just like instantaneous that goes on. And I think that once that starts going on, then you start slicing the loaf a little thinner. If you really look at the history of the ratings in bouldering, that from like about V1 to V9, it was about 1 grade per decade. Okay. That it increased. Now, I can understand it going at a faster rate after V9, because at that point was when we introduced pads to the sport.
Right.
And then you could try a lot more times per day.
Sure.
And without a penalty. It wasn't as punishing on your body. So I could see it increasing a bit. But then it's increased about a grade every 3 years since then, I think. Mm-hmm. And so...
You don't think that more people, more training,
No, I think all that counts. More people, more training, better, more... the pads, making you be able to try more.
Yeah.
I think that accelerates it. But at the same time, I feel like the human nature is to slice the loaf thinner and thinner, so that you can claim the next greatest thing, because there are rewards now for that. There weren't rewards back then.
Right.
If you did V8 and people are doing V7, whatever, the V8 and V7 didn't exist. Those were just some fucked up construct out of my mind that came about to have this guidebook end up in print.
It's a little disturbing to me to think that we all measure ourselves by some fucked up construct out of your mind.
It should be disturbing. Very disturbing, dude. Yeah. Yes, this is the measure baiters out there. Just like, run amok.
So... how do you feel about things like V16, V17? Do you think those can even exist at this point? Or do you think it's just the loaf's been sliced so thin?
No. No, I don't think the loaf's been sliced so thin.
Okay.
I think it is a function of society we live in now. Social media, everybody's connected so closely that independent thinking is disappearing. The great boulders of history, and I want to say two names, John Gill and Jim Holloway,
Okay.
were hugely independent thinkers. They weren't ruled by a rating system because they didn't exist. The rating system wasn't there. They only wanted to do what they found challenging for them. And they were physically superior to their compatriots at the time.
Okay.
Gill, just phenomenal. One-arm front levers, you know.
Yep.
One-finger pull-ups and stuff like that. And, you know, when other people were like, you know, wow, 5'10" is the tops or
Right.
whatever. You know, I mean, he was like this amazing gymnast, and he took a gymnastics mindset to the world.
Yeah.
Holloway comes by, and he is so much better than everybody else that there was no question. Who's the best boulder in the world? Jim Holloway. No question. Absolutely. You can't say that now. You can't say who's the best boulder in the world now, because everybody will say, well, I think this person is. No, well, this person hasn't done that problem. This person, blah, 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 blah. You know, there's a lot of really talented boulders out there. But the thing is, they're all sucked into the same mentality because they're all sucked into the media world where all of a sudden you get free shoes. I mean, Jim Holloway never got a free pair of shoes. You know, John Gill, whatever, you know. There was no tangible reward for those people. So they would think, and their reward was all in their own head. And that doesn't happen with today's boulders because you get told, wow, well, if you climb V17, you will be our big hero this year, and we'll give you more shoes or whatever it is. You know, I mean, some piddling little reward that is financial and maybe social media wise is a big deal, but it is not the sort of thing that drove the independent thinkers, the ones that took the sport in a different direction, like Gill did. I mean, completely different direction than anybody had before. I mean, people viewed, you know, bouldering as just training for other things.
So you don't think the top boulders of today would just get enough personal satisfaction out of it to go do it? Even if it weren't for the social media and the sponsors?
God, no. They're chasing. Are you kidding? They're all there YouTubing themselves. They're all there on Instagram. They're all there on Facebook. They're all doing all that
I think
stuff,
that's part of the
promoting
game, though.
themselves. Well, and, hey, granted, if I had the opportunity to do that back in the day, those things didn't exist. But if I was getting paid to do it, I probably would have. I mean, I'm not
Sure.
giving myself a pass on them. But the deal is, it's like, I call it the Russian pole vaulter mentality. Okay? Back in the day, maybe even now, but in Russia, if you broke a world record in your sport, you know, an Olympic sport, say, you got to move into a bigger, better apartment somewhere. The state would reward you with that. Okay? So these athletes would smash the world record in practice, but it didn't count in practice. They had to do it in competition. Well, in competition, they were very careful to only break the world record by like a quarter inch each time. Because every time they broke the record by a quarter inch, they got to move into a better apartment. Well, now if they broke it by 3 inches, they get to move into a no better apartment than if they had broken it by only a quarter inch. And so now you have all these climbers who are like, well, they're told that, wow, if you do V17, we're going to think you're the best thing in the world, and we're going to give you this, this, and this. Well, why aren't they doing V20? You know, that's the sort of leap that Jim Holloway was doing. Oh my God, he put up problems that weren't repeated for 20 to 30 years. Who's doing that now? I mean, the hardest problems put up today are repeated in a year or two.
And you don't think
or maybe sometimes even in a week or two. You know, they aren't there's not this quantum leap away from the rest of the pack. And the only way to get that quantum leap, I believe, is by being a truly independent thinker and not worrying about what everybody else thinks about you. But that's what's going on. Everybody worries about what everybody else thinks about them now because social media is so omnipresent in our lives and everything like that. And people are cashing in on it. And, if somebody dangles a financial reward in front of you because you're a good boulderer, well, hell, I would take it. Why wouldn't you? And then if they tell you, well, you just nudge it up this little bit, we'll give you more. Hell, then you're in their system. You lose your ability to think independently and push the sport forward. I mean, the greatest boulders in the world now, who knows? They could be, living in the Nubian desert in Sudan or whatever, and crushing stuff we can't even imagine because they don't even have shoes. But they're just getting up there to get away from some animal. I don't know.
We just don't hear
whatever
about
it is. But we don't hear about it because they are separated from the thing. But it's impossible to separate yourself from that. Somebody has talent. Somebody says, "Oh my God, I saw this kid do this." We got to give him shoes. We got to get him signed up. We got to get him, here. We're going to do ads with him. And we're going to sell gear with him and whatever, or her. And so, boom, all of a sudden, then you end up in the situation we're in now where, the incentive is to nudge it up slowly and not to think independently.
And you don't think much of that has to do with exactly what you were talking about with sprinting? Like they only break the world record by a fraction of a second.
Well, at this point in sprinting, it's because they've been doing it for so long and the science is so dialed in. But no,
maybe it's dialed in.
I don't think so at all. No, I think in climbing that there are probably climbers out there capable of doing V19 now if they could free their minds from this other stuff.
Okay. Is there a way to even do that in today's society? Do you think it's even possible?
No, you would have to drop out of today's society to do it. That's the problem. That's why I'm saying it just nudges up the way it does.
Sure,
and it's just like a little slow creep upwards. But it is, that slow creep upwards is dominated by economics. I mean, right now, my great passion is wildlife photography.
Yep. Which you've gotten really good at, by the way.
Well, I thank you.
I love seeing it.
Yeah. But I spend a lot of time, sitting around staring at animals doing their thing and trying to get photos of their behavior. And one thing I noticed that animals don't do is they don't try to accumulate money. We are the only species on the planet.
That might be because they don't have money, but
But no, we are the only species on the planet that actually recognizes money as an entity. Don't you think that the other million species maybe have it right and we've got it wrong?
Could be. Could be.
It's
sure.
just like, okay, so it's like, boom. Okay, well, if they just, are psyched on money, or we're psyched on money, or V grades is bouldering currency. That's bouldering money. Then it's like,
So basically, what you're saying here is that you fucked up bouldering.
Oh, I sucked the soul right out of the sport. Sucked it right out. Yeah, I didn't want to have to admit that right now, but yeah, it's true.
Well, no, I think a lot of people thank you for it, even though you're awfully harsh on it, because, I think a lot of us use it in a more constructive way than you think.
Well, I think it at the top ends of the sport, it's where it gets abused. Just like money does.
I think it's tricky up there too.
Look at all these billionaires who only want to make more money, pay less taxes, whatever, but they'll never be able to spend all the money they got. Okay? Mm-hmm. And then look at the struggling working class who makes money and uses it to pay their rent, buy their groceries, buy some beer, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. For those people, yeah, money is a convenience. for people above that level, the ones who can never spend all the money they've ever made, money is a status symbol. And the same can go to grades. You know, like you say, okay, yeah, V grades can really help a lot of people out. They can, you know, take people to a boulder problem of you know, let's say we look at the guidebook and say, oh, hey, there's a bunch of V3s in this area, and that's what I really want to work on. I'm just breaking into V3s.
Yep.
I'm going to go there. You know, then it becomes helpful. But, you know, when you get to the upper levels where it's like, I'm going to put up the first V18 or something like that, well, then you're at that point where you already have enough V grades that you can't spend them all in your lifetime. Now you're doing it for ego.
Well, what about, here's a thought that I had never really thought about until you started down this path, but you said that boulders today could be doing V19 or something. You know?
Absolutely.
What if
Why
they
not?
are? What if the real grades of these V16s should be V19 via your scale? Maybe they've been so nervous to up the grades that they've been pushing them up really slowly, whereas they could have given it this big number.
That's an interesting thought, but I think you're wrong. I'm just going to say,
I love the disdain on your face.
I'm going to say, holy smokes! If any of these number chasers thought they were actually doing V19, they would be claiming V19 right now, and that the you know, my argument holds that I say that, you know, you can't make a quantum jump where you are, you know, 3, 4, 5 grades above everybody else unless you're an independent thinker. And I don't see any of those independent thinkers out there. There's not a current John Gill. There's not a current Jim Holloway.
Who do you think's the closest?
I don't think anybody.
No?
No, none whatsoever. Name a boulder out there who's got a problem that has gone unrepeated for, you know, more than 5 years.
Matt?
No.
No? Okay. More than 2 years?
I mean, I'm not anywhere close to the threshold of climbing, so.
Yeah, I don't follow the highest grades enough. Alex, do you know any?
No, but I know like Joya and stuff wasn't repeated for a long time. And
Yeah. Alex said Joya wasn't repeated for a long time. Is that Christian Brenna? Is that Joya? Oh, yeah. So they're out there.
How long ago was that put up?
I don't know.
Maybe from Adam Andras' V16. You can check.
Yeah, there's quite a few out there that are unrepeated, but I do think there are guys out there
Were they
like
put up
Dave
30 years
Graham.
ago?
Well, no.
Were they put up 20 years ago?
No.
Were they put up 10 years ago?
Some of them maybe, yeah.
Okay. So that's my point, is that when it goes 20, 30 years, it goes a generation, 2 generations before it's repeated, then you'll know somebody was thinking outside the box. When it gets repeated by the same generation, they're in the same box.
What's an example of a John Gill or Jim Holloway problem that lasted 30 years?
I'll go right to Holloway, and I'll say meat hook. I'll say trice. Yeah. I will say, oh God, there's another one.
Did meat hook ever get repeated?
Slap shot still hasn't been
slap
repeated.
Shot. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
So there you go, right there.
And we do have to qualify that with Jim Holloway as a
and how about
freak
the
of
thimble?
nature.
You know, that went 20 years without being repeated. You know, so yeah, exactly. There are those.
It's changed though. Also, it's different.
Exactly.
Because I know for sure, like I got one of the earliest scents of trice, like scents of what after it got repeated, and I just know a lot of people didn't go and try it. So that's the thing. If a boulder problem just hasn't ever been really tried, and then if a lot of people have tried it and just failed. Mm-hmm. So I think that's like.
And you tried it 30 years after Holloway put it up.
No, I just meant it went like untried for a long time.
No, I tried it.
It went untried. It went untried by good climbers.
Tried it.
That was actually my boyfriend Carlo Traversi at the time. We're not together now, but a long time ago we were together, and I know him and Jamie Emerson were the people like trying it, and no one else in Boulder was trying it.
Well, maybe at that time, but it had been tried on and off through the years. That it was a knowledge problem. People knew where it was. So,
Yeah.
you know, hey, more power to them for doing it and to you for doing it.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
But
for
what
sure.
I'm saying is like you are repeating something that's already 20 to 30 years old when you do it. And are there those problems today going up?
We'll ever find those problems ever again.
Yeah, there are just too many people.
Big.
Yeah.
And there's so many more people in climbing than there was a long time ago. And it's just getting bigger and bigger. So, and if something's at the cutting edge, everyone's going to want to go and try it.
Yeah.
Best climbers in the world.
I think I agree with Alex on this one.
There's easier flow of information too. I mean, like when someone, and this is true through word of mouth because climbing community was tight through the years. But now, like when someone does something, because of what you're saying, you know, they're spraying about it on Instagram and in the magazines and all that stuff. Everyone knows about the new cutting edge problem, and everyone wants to go get a piece of it. And so there's more attempts.
Okay, but who's the best boulder in the world right now?
I have no fucking clue.
Okay, see, but that's what I'm saying is back when Holloway did Trice and stuff, everybody knew who the best boulder
Well,
in the world was back then.
there were fewer boulderers back then, and so it was like,
Well, yeah,
who's the
there were
best
fewer,
out of
but
the 20
still-
boulderers there are.
Yeah, but you could still look at who the best 20 boulderers are in the world. You might be able to come up with that list right now and then try to figure out who's the best.
I think we
could have done
could.
that back in Holloway's day and tried to figure out who was the best of that. But there's no question whatsoever who was the best back then. And what I'm saying is it comes down to independent thinking. And I don't think that independent thinking it's hard for it to exist now in a world that's dominated by social media where everybody's thinking together. They're not thinking independently. And it was easier before. I'm saying this is a function of the times. I'm not saying it's like, oh, you know, your generation is inferior to Holloway's generation or something like that nobody comes out independently thinking. I'm saying that because of how social media and the climbing media and whatnot dominate the sport, that when somebody comes up with talent like you or Alex and gets rewarded for it at an early age, you get sucked into the system. That system didn't exist for Gil. It didn't exist for Holloway. That's why they could think outside the box and look at the rock differently than you do. That's my argument.
I think there's some truth to that, but I think maybe it's just that being outside the box and thinking independently has changed faces. I think it's not as easy to recognize anymore because
it's kind of like the world of science, you know, where like, you know, back in Newton's era, all he needed to do was recognize an apple falling from the tree, and that's gravity. But now, like the like leading edge scientists, their theories are like totally out there because they have to cut this little space of knowledge that hasn't been tapped before, because the whole landscape is already covered with theories and ideas and principles. And so there's less room for being novel, and there's less room for advancement. And which is not to say that there's no room. And we may find giant steps in climbing or science or anything else that come from these true independent thinkers. But I think as you progress and as more people do something, whether it's science or climbing, you get fewer opportunities for radical like change from what's happening, or new inventions or new ideas or new advancements.
You are enforcing my argument right there, because you're saying that like the advancements in science aren't as great as they used to because of this expanded world out there where there's more knowledge, you know, everything that's going on around them, you know? And so I am saying that if you took somebody with incredible climbing talent who didn't know about the climbing world, but for some reason decided to pursue climbing on their own right now, they could do stuff that we couldn't even imagine right now.
It's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe John's not as extreme as we're all seeing him.
Yes, I am. I hope I am.
But I know I need another beer. Plenty of what? Well, I think there's tons of unrepeated problems around, but.
I mean, apparently. What about the theory that, so in, my opinion, what I see that, with social media is that everyone wants to look cool and downgrade all the problems. So my theory is that we could have already hit V16, V17, V18, but then everything that's been V14 before got downgraded to V13, and everything that's V14 got downgraded to V12. So if everything's getting downgraded, the next higher grade up is getting further to catch.
Yeah. I think that's certainly a part of it.
And people are getting stronger instead of thinking that they're getting stronger, they're thinking the climbs are getting easier.
Yep.
So maybe we could have already been there and a lot of that comes down to ego, I think, where in our society where some people, professional climbers, are not getting as much as other people, but they're climbing as hard as them, they want to look cool and downgrade those boulder problems that the professionals are getting paid to do.
Yep.
So they go out there and be the macho and, that's not really this great. It's actually, I think it's easier.
No, I agree. I think that happens quite a bit. And that's what I tried to say to John in a way that, I think maybe those problems are on his scale much harder. A lot of the hardest problems in the world. So, yeah.
And no one wants their stuff to get downgraded anymore, so if they put something up, a lot of times they put it usually a little bit softer.
Yep. Get another beer, John.
I think it would be interesting. So John mentioned the number of years between increases in.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that laid out.
10 years per grade or whatever, and now it's 3 years per grade. But it'd be interesting. So you could do that, but another way to slice it would be to say the number of per person climbing days for an increase in a grade. And so if you look in between 1960 and 1970, the number of days that people bouldered
were 10.
Whatever it was. And now, as you go up,
I agree with you. At the same time, I would say that the thing that accelerated the most were pads.
That's probably
have
true.
Have you ever bouldered without pads?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started, there were no pads.
Do you know how many times you tried a problem without pads compared to with pads?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know how much quicker you succeeded on when you had pads? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that probably doubled the acceleration.
Climbing
rate.
shoes made a huge difference.
Yeah. There have been some big advances.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Man,
now knee bars, we're all downgrading your problems.
I didn't have sticky rands when I did Mother of the Future. And I had boxy thing. I didn't have slippers. I mean, I did that in first generation fee race.
I looked at that thing the day before it got closed.
When you put slippers on with sticky rands.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, let's get off the subject of grades just for a bit here.
Thank you.
Talk to me about early days of Hueco. What are some standout problems, standout stories? What do you remember? Or do you remember anything? There's been a lot of drinking between now and then.
There has been. And I don't remember any of that. Well, the early days, it was hanging out in the campground. Todd Skinner was there in Joshua Tree when I was there, and we met Mike Head and crew.
Oh, okay.
And we had both said, "Hey, yeah, let's go check this out." It's like, well, Joshua Tree, it's just, fine, but hey, somewhere new, cool. And so we both checked it out that year. He had some job up in Ruidoso, I think, working near the ski area, and I came out, and so that winter of 82, 83 was when we both first came down here and started climbing here. And, the locals, they had jobs and stuff like that. They just couldn't live here full time and start climbing. And we went nuts. And I was just like, holy crap, look at all this potential.
Was Todd mostly doing routes at the time?
He wanted to do rope routes, yeah. That was his focus, and I was more interested in bouldering. And so, it's it was to my advantage that I was the only one who was here full time who wanted to put up boulder problems. Now Murray was coming through at the time, but then he put up the El Murrays, which would have been probably in 83.
Yep. And he was kind of
and some other things.
He was kind of a hermetic legend of sorts.
Oh my God, yeah, no, he's the man in Southwest bouldering. Oh yeah, just absolutely legendary. And he put up the El Murrays and a few other things, like the donkey shows left and right, whatever. Some of the classic hard boulder problems here. And then he was such a training fanatic. He overtrained and his wrists started separating from his arms.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, he was so fanatic about training that he was doing such extreme pulls on his hands that it was starting to pull his wrists apart. And
never heard anything like that.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of it since or anything like that. But he suffered these injuries that knocked him out of the game for a long time, which frankly opened the door for me, which is, sad for Bob. I like the guy. And he was always an inspiration to me. But then I was here like a kid in a candy store or, a drunken liquor store.
Is there a standout like first project, something that you spent more than just a couple of 3 or 4 tries on? Or did you?
I can't think of that. I mean, I think of the one thing that, just like kind of clicked in my mind was doing Sign of the Cross.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned that before. Like I crawled through those boulders and popped my head up and go, wow, look at this thing. And went back and did it. And there's pictures of me doing it in my Cletter shoes.
Cletter shoes.
Nice. Yeah, you guys might not be familiar with
those. Are like rope soles, right?
No, they didn't have rope soles. What we did was we took off, they had kind of a Vibram-like sole, lug sole on them. But we would take that sole off and we would replace it with a neoprene work boot sole.
Oh, okay.
It's called cat's paw neoprene. And it said no slip on the sole, so we thought this is cool shit. Well, this is long before sticky rubber. So,
which is still not no slip, by the way.
Back then, yeah, well, are you kidding? Compared to this stuff, no, this is very hard rubber, but you could edge on a dime with it. And that's how the technique was back then. You didn't have sticky rubber. It wasn't invented yet. So smearing was used for 45-degree slabs that you were walking up, but they weren't. You weren't smearing on a foothold under an overhang at all. That just didn't happen. So you were super precise with your feet, driving off of little tiny, bumps in the rock, and these Cletter shoes with the cat's paw soles on them worked really good like that. But anyway, there's a picture of me doing a first ascent of Sign of the Cross in these Cletter shoes. Nice. And that was the one that like just opened my mind to like, oh my God, every boulder here has potential. You just got to crawl underneath them. You wander around all these things. There's just so much here to do because that was such a cool problem. Yeah. And then, when I adopted that attitude, then my God, everything. It just opened up. It's just like, holy crap, there's so many good problems here to do.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's just unreal. And then
you could crawl in little caves here forever.
And then it was just like year after year after year of like, wow. Well, what do I do next on the list? Because like I said before, I made a point to walk a different way back to the campground every time. And I would see new and new stuff. And I had this giant list of things in my mind that I wanted to go try. And I couldn't do them all. There's only so much of me to go around. But I just I wanted to do them all. And so I would just go through the list and hey, if somebody beat me to first ascent of a problem that I wanted to do, well, the only reason they did was because I wanted to do something else even more back then. It was just like, it was just a magical
Were there any battles for first ascents back then? Do you remember any?
Not many. That came later after the guidebook came out. Then that's when it heated up.
Any memorable ones?
Well, I would say that I had people I climbed with. Chris Hill would be the best. We spent so much time climbing together, and he's one of my best friends, and we're both the same height, same reach. She was like 10 pounds lighter, a little bit better strength to weight ratio. I was probably a little bit more determined.
Yeah.
So it kind of equaled out, and we would battle over first ascents of things. But there was so much to go around back then.
Sure.
It was just like, wow, they would do one, he'd do one, I'd do another one or whatever. I mean, I remember he beat me to the control tower. I was like, because I'd just been up and I came down. Okay, psych up for that loose move up there. And then he went up and did it. Oh, you bastard. I had to go up and do it. And then I do it right after him. So there's so many of those first ascents that he did or I did that he or I did the second ascent 5 minutes later.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And, it was tremendous. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that's a cool partnership to have. You've brought up pads quite a bit as one of the main things that jumped grades up. Talk to me about something like C-Spot that didn't have pads when you did it, right?
I think I might have had the very first generation one I got from...
Which isn't like the pad that we know it now.
No, it was 24 by 24 inches and an inch and a half thick of carpet padding.
Yeah.
So basically when you're up at the lip of that, it's like you're looking down a cocktail napkin.
Yeah. So how does something like that go? Did you, was it a ground up thing?
Absolutely.
What was your ethic back then?
Absolutely. Now... For the record, Bob Murray had top roped that thing before I ever climbed it.
Okay.
But I didn't know that.
Gotcha.
And it was completely clean. There's no evidence that it had been climbed. And so in my mind, it was a first ascent, and I got the thrill of the first ascent. And I think that's something I did. I kind of like the multiple first ascent mentality where... you do a first ascent, but you don't tell anybody, and the next person who comes up thinks they did the first ascent, and you get the same thrill.
Right.
I mean, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too.
And hey, if you've only done a couple first ascents, maybe you're not down with that. But after you've done your first 100 or first 1,000 first ascents, then another first ascent doesn't mean that much to you.
Right.
It's so. But on that one, I remember I would climb up and down, working out the first moves until I was like, about 4 feet below the lip. There's a set of pretty good holds there. Mm-hmm. And go like, man, I might want a spot for this. And I went back down, went over to the gymnasium, which is, like a...
Yep, through the little
3 or 4 minute scramble away through the chimney there. Yeah, and there was a bunch of Canadians climbing there. I was going, oh, hey, Canadians, man, these guys will do anything. So I grabbed 2 of these Canadians, come over and spot me. I figured, my thinking was they both couldn't run away in time if I fell.
You just
I was going to have 2 people spotting me. That's why it was called C-Spot Run. It was like, I'm going like, well... They might bump into each other or whatever. I might still hit them on the way down if I came off. Who knows? I thought my chances were better if I had 2 of them than if I just had 1. And then I went up, and I remember getting up there and just going like, both my hands were pretty good on these 2 holds, and I was going to jump for the lip. And it was like, I wasn't sure which hand I was going to jump for the lip with.
Yeah.
And I didn't make my mind up until I was in the middle of the move. Which just seems crazy because usually I'm very, very calculated boulderer. But then I just wanted it so bad that I was just like jump for the lip. And at that point, I think I went with my left hand for the lip that time. And then when I went back to repeat it later, I went for my right hand. Oh my God, that's so much easier. but it was, yeah. It was amazing, but it was one of those times you're going like, okay, I've calculated it all out to a T. I can get up to here to this move. I got one move to do. I've moved this hard before, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm looking at it. It looks like one that I should be able to do if it was right off the ground. Mm-hmm. So why not just do it?
Add that little bit of determination and desire.
Yeah, and so went through for it.
Yeah.
And did it. And, it was a great one.
And now it's a super classic problem in Hueco. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So before we wrap it up here, are there things you left undone that you wish you wouldn't have?
Oh.
In Hueco?
Well, there's things I wish I would have done, but they're done now.
Right.
That sort of thing. But
are there things that you tried for a while and never ended up doing that you wish you would?
Well, full service would be the obvious one.
Okay. Talk to me about that.
I
just saw that thing today for the first time. I hadn't seen it before.
Oh my God. Okay. Amazing thing. So I'd done the stand-up start. That was my problem, the lip service.
Okay.
From way back when.
Yep.
And then I was looking at it. It's going like, wow, you could start this down lower. And I worked out this sequence. Terrible sequence. And I convinced myself it was the best sequence.
Right.
The only sequence.
You got trapped in it.
Yeah, I got trapped in a sequence. And this happened, you know it. Yeah, we all know, well, not all of us, but maybe most of us know it, that like you can trap yourself into a bad sequence and convince yourself that's the only way you can do it. And this is a learning experience for me.
Yeah.
And, despite the fact, how long I've been bowling or whatever, I mean, I still learn from my mistakes. And I had this horrible sequence. Now, I'd done it from starting with my feet, where people start with their hands now. So, I mean, like...
Right. So, are you starting on, like, the J and H holds?
Those first two moves aren't that hard. I started from 2 moves out, and I've done it from there.
Right.
It was just all the hard climbing. But I said, well, obviously, you can start from down here.
Right.
But when I would get out there to the hard climbing, I just kept some weird, fucked up subconscious reason I'd yank my toe off and this stupid little toe hook. And I never thought of changing my sequence because I thought, oh, I've got the right sequence, to do it. So it was, at the time, kind of bitter pill to swallow. I'd heard that, because I was being like territorial.
Right.
Because I was, young buck back then and everything like that. And,
I think we all do that at some point.
Yeah, and I wanted people to stay off my project, go find your own project, sort of thing. And but then I'd heard that maybe Skip Guerin had done it or whatever, but they, Skip wasn't saying anything about it because he's not that kind of guy. He just do it and go on, and then finally Dale Goddard came by and did it. And he was happy to tell me he'd done it because he wasn't too happy about a decision I made when I was one of the judges at the Hueco Bouldering contest before, and he tied for first, which is, God, what can be worse than sharing the glory of tying for first?
Yeah. But, you've always caused waves, huh?
Yeah, and probably not a good thing. Not something I'm proud of. I can say that.
I don't know. I think waves are necessary sometimes. Not all of them, but some of them are.
Yeah, no, I've caused more than I should have.
Well, I think you've done enough good things to set that off, or to offset that.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. I get really tickled going around now. I mean, I go out to the park on these tours to East Mountain, West Mountain, East Spurt or whatever, and I see groups of people clustered around, and you have to pay money to go on these tours.
Right.
They're paying money to go climb the problems I put up 30 years ago.
Yeah. I saw how happy you were today, and that made me happy. Seeing you
it's
that
just
way.
like, yeah, it's just going like, wow. I mean, I am glad that everything I did had an impact on these people to where that they are so psyched that they are doing, high pro glow or
Yeah.
moonshine roof or
Amazing
whatever
problems.
it is, baby face, all these things they're running out to do and line up to do. And it's just like, wow, at the time when I was putting those up, it was all about, I want to do that climb,
Sure. And it's still that way for all these people.
Yeah. And now
they'll go back to the same area over and over because they want to do these same climbs.
Yeah. So
I think that's really cool.
I think there's a lot of influence that I had on how bouldering is now with the grades and how popular Hueco is and how that spread through the world and everything and people using pads and all that stuff. But, and it wasn't intentional at the time. It was just kind of organic, grew out of all of that. And, I'm glad people are having a lot of fun doing it.
Yep, I'm glad you did. Surly and all, I'm glad for it. And full service is going to be there. So after you do Midnight Lightning, you always come back.
Should we talk about that? Hey, let's put in a little promo for the film, huh?
Yeah. Tell me, when's it coming out? After you do it, I assume.
After I do it.
Well, that's gonna be soon.
Well, maybe I might never do it. But I mean, okay. So I'm on this project, the Old Man Lightning project. Now we're trying to climb Midnight Lightning 25 years after I did it last. And, 25 years ago, you count the number of people who did it on your fingers and toes.
Right, right.
And
You're going to go back
I let myself go to a slew of injuries and whatnot, that I had kind of decided I was going to be happy climbing 10A trad and be good with that for the rest of my life. But turns out when you let yourself go like that, all of a sudden 10A trad gets kind of scary. And then 5.9s you're getting worried about and stuff like that. And then I had to turn it around, and so I started training. I said, man, I got to set myself a big goal.
Yeah.
And I won't stick with that goal if I don't make it public.
Yeah. I agree with that. My grandfather used to say, throw your hat over the fence. And what he meant was, if you want to do something, if you want to climb a fence, throw your hat over, and then you have to climb over. So I like to put my goals out there as well and make it public. Then I stick to it. And if I fail, I fail. But I at least went for it.
Well, I don't like doing that, but I threw my hat over the fence anyway.
Well, good.
And,
we're all rooting for you.
I told the world that I'm going to try to climb Midnight Lightning again at age 57, which is, bouldering arguably is a young person's sport, but I hope to prove that wrong. And
I hope you do too.
Been trying hard, got to lip a few times and then hurt my finger, and it's driving me nuts, but that's why I'm down here now. I mean, the
Come
weather
down here, get fit and get strong.
Officially been the wettest winter in history down in Yosemite now, and there just hasn't been a window to go try it. So I'm here in Hueco, trying to keep my fitness up, and so that I get another crack at it as soon as it dries out.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to see how it goes when you get back to Yosemite.
Thank you,
and thanks for sitting down with me, man.
Right on, man.
All right. Thanks, John.
Yeah, hey, next time buy some bitter beer, okay?
So John has been back to Yosemite. He injured himself again, but he is not giving up. And I texted him just the other day to ask how the project was going, if he was still training, what was up. And he said, only one rest day planned from here to October, and that's for a colonoscopy. Ain't being a senior athlete grand. So, John, we definitely wish you the best once you get back to the Lightning, and I have every faith that you will. I have no doubt, because you're a stubborn-ass old man, and I know you can do it. Definitely, you should check out John on the social medias. I will link to all of that in your show notes. You should also check out the oldmanlightning.com website and the trailer for the film. Also, I will link to that. And for more on John's Condor project, which is pretty cool. And I know he did, shortly after this interview, capture his white whale on film, and but then new condors were born, and now there's another one he hasn't gotten a photo of. So that's pretty exciting to still have that out there. Or I assume he hasn't gotten a photo yet. I haven't heard. And you can check out more about that at peregrinefund.org, and you can donate there. Choose the California Condor when you donate to help out that cause. As far as grades go, some of you may not be aware, I assume most of you are, but some of you may not, that the V grade is named for John Sherman. His nickname was Verm. So he originated the grade, but honestly, I think it's grown into this whole other monster that really isn't that easy to understand. It's definitely not the grading system that he intended it to be. So I think it's tough to say what the boulders of today are doing with it and where it stands as opposed to yesteryear. You really can't compare those athletes to these athletes. Would Jimmy Webb crush the Skip Garrons and the Jim Holloways if they were around today? Probably, but they had new training resources if they were around today. So who knows? It's pretty impossible to make that comparison. The one thing I can say for absolute sure is that the Jimmy Webbs of today stand on the shoulders of those guys, of the John Gills, of the Skip Garrons, of the Jim Holloways, of the John Shermans, and their contribution to this sport cannot be diminished. Even though John is a grump and just wants to argue, me too, his contribution can't be diminished at all. So, John, next time I will bring better beer and I'll bring better arguments. And I hope to see you again soon. As for you guys, you know where to find us. Hit me up if you want to get private sessions during the festival this year. If you're overseas and you want to order some shit, support us. Do it. We would love you for it. I'll send you a bunch of stickers while we're at it. PowerCompanyClimbing.com. You can find me on the Instagrams, on the Facebooks. You can find me on the Pinterests. You will never, ever find me on the Twitters because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, to build power. This time 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 to build